Hi and welcome to the Product Makers Lab, the show where we dive into the real world stories of product innovation with makers. Today I'm talking to someone who's helping to shape the future of food manufacturing on the Sunshine Coast, Will Nicholl from Maleny Cuisine. Maleny Cuisine is believed to be Queensland's oldest condiment brand, and under Will's leadership, it's evolved into a business that stays true to its heritage while embracing thoughtful, practical innovation. In this episode, Will shares what it's like to take over an existing food business, how some of his most successful innovations have come not from fancy NPD pipelines, but from small pivots like changing a product name or label. We also talk about the power of staying close to your customers, the value of testing before launching, and why strong supplier relationships can be a real competitive advantage. If you've ever wondered how to modernise a heritage brand without losing its soul, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. G'day, Will.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. And how are you?
Good, thanks.
Excellent. I'm really excited to have you here on the podcast today. And for our listener, Will Nicholl is from Maleny Cuisine, and I'm really excited to hear about Maleny's journey and how innovation happens.
Sounds good. It's been a long journey and not without a lot of mistakes, so there's plenty to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, terrific. So to get us started, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about how you got started.
So how we got started was we had a very small family. We had lived in New Zealand, and I owned a landscaping company, and my wife's a teacher. When our youngest was 18 weeks old, we sold everything in New Zealand and moved to the Sunshine Coast, and bought Maleny Cuisine.
Right.
It was owned by a retired couple who had bought it for their daughter, and she, for one reason or another, didn't actually come and take it over. So they were running it, and they didn't really want to. They wanted to retire. So we bought it, and it was going okay, but everything was phone calls and faxes. This was 13 years ago, so the majority of other companies were pretty big on websites and so on. So we saw the opportunity and thought we can make websites and get someone to make us websites, and we understand, we're a bit younger, we understand the information technology that's out there, and we could probably refresh the brand and make it do something. As far as I'm aware, it's the oldest condiment brand in Queensland. There may be someone who jumps up and says, oh no, mine's older, but as far as I know, that we are the oldest. So the brand was there. It just needed fresh legs to get it to go.
Yeah. And what was the product range?
Product range was actually fairly similar to what we have now.
Okay.
The original inventor of the products I know quite well. He's actually a dad in our netball club that my daughters play for, and I've done the netball barbecue next to him quite a few times. So we've discussed how he invented the core range that we have, and I've just played around and tickled those recipes to innovate more current sort of flavours, I suppose. And along with, we have a really tight relationship with our fruit and veggie supplier. I'll give them a plug. They're called the Farmer's Gate, and they're in Kaluan, and they're amazing to deal with, Kylie. And so she can tell me what's good and in the quantities we need, because it's all very well saying, oh yeah, I can get you 100 kilograms of ginger from Budrum when I need a ton. So she's really good at that. She understands the quantities that we use, because we're manufacturing for supermarkets, so we don't use small quantities of things. We're not massive, but we do need to have continuous supply. And that's where Kylie's really cool. She helps us out with that and makes sure that year round we can get what we need.
Yeah, so you do need the same ingredients year round, or is there any seasonality to your products?
There's a little bit of seasonality that we can, because we've got 18-month shelf life. So and that's where having the relationship with the fresh produce growers comes into it. If there's a glut of tomatoes and they're really cheap but really pretty good or whatever, we can just do tomatoes for a month, and that's where Kylie and her business partners will come to us and say, look, we're forecasting onions are going to be really expensive next month. So shall we get you in 3 tons and you just do onions this month, and then next month don't do any, sort of thing. And we need that, because otherwise we could get stung if the price of onions has recently jumped from per kilogram from about $1 to about $3.50. And when you're using tons of them, that can hurt.
That's a pretty sizable increase. Yeah, I understand. I'm really enjoying that you're talking about this supplier relationship that you have with Kylie. I've been working with quite a few businesses, taking them through their business model recently. And of course, in the business model is that key partnerships block, where you really want to start to think strategically about those key partnerships. And I think when you're in a small to medium enterprise, often they happen quite organically, like that relationship does just build. Is that how it's come about with Kylie?
Absolutely. When we bought the company, previous owners were using a company that did all of the processing for them. So they would put in an order and the onions would come peeled and chopped and however they needed them, and the price was dollars per kilogram. We quickly worked out that our kitchen staff, a lot of our production, because we don't use preservatives or fillers, is a long, slow cook to reduce the water content of the fruit out to get the consistency we need. So we have staff standing around, essentially, watching something boil. So we decided, and we did lose staff over it, that they could peel onions while they were waiting. So the people the previous owners were being supplied the fresh produce with weren't that keen on losing this client who they'd been prepping and dicing or slicing or whatever. So we looked around and Kylie and her dad had just started.
Right.
He was a fruit buyer for someone, and then they'd gone off on their own, and so they were a really small company too. And they happened to be right next to my kids. Their warehouse was right next to my kids' primary school, and had the kids that have been 6 or 7, 5 and 3. And so I'd be driving to drop them off at primary school. We'd go to the farmer's gate to pick up whatever on the back of my ute, and the kids would jump out, run into the cold room, and Kylie would give them some blueberries to take to school or whatever, and they knew it as the coldy woldy because it was a cold room.
Yeah, I love that.
So from that start of their business, that sort of start of us taking over Maleny Cuisine, we've had that relationship with them, and they've seen our kids grow up. I've seen Kylie's kids grow up, and we try and help each other out as much as we can. Yeah,
that's terrific. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I suspect that primary school is right next to my house. Cool. There you go. Tell me, having that strong relationship with Kylie, how did that bode for you through COVID? Did that really help, having that relationship, or did you struggle getting supply?
Well, yeah, COVID was tough because we were sitting on about 30% of our client base being restaurants. And then, of course, COVID, restaurants were gone. Woolworths was also gone for a period of time because we are a premium product. And at the time, pasta, tin tomatoes and toilet paper were taking shelf space. Yeah, we took a hit with that. Kylie stepped up and said she started doing fruit and veggie boxes, hands-free delivery to doors, contact-free, sorry. And she rang up and said, hey, I know you guys are struggling with it. I'm going to buy and out of my own money and put in each of our boxes one of Maleny Cuisine's chutneys.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, that is a special relationship. Yeah.
So they did that for us for a period of time, COVID, and that really helped.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm very impressed. I'd really love to delve into a few different areas. You talk about being in retailers and in food service.
Yep.
Yeah, it'd be great to know. Let's start with the retailers, how your relationship works there and what kind of implications that might have for innovation.
All of our retail is via distribution network. Mm-hmm. So we don't have any, apart from doing in-store tastings if asked, We don't really have a lot of contact with the retailers themselves.
Okay.
So all our promotions and all of those things go via a distributor, and they we ask the distributors to money match with us. So if we put in 10%, they put in 10%, and then the store gets 20% that they can use as a promotion. So we don't have a lot of direct feedback from our retailers.
I'd love to know more about the operation. Obviously, it's a family business. Are the kids there participating these days in making a product?
Yep. But not daily. Our eldest is year 12, and then year 10, and then year 8. So they're not interested really in what we do, except we do as a one-off, a baked good, which is a gluten-free Christmas pudding. And that gets wrapped in a Hessian bag with a bow on it. And I can't tie bows very well. So the girls get roped into tying bows. Actually, the younger two are really, really good at getting a hole punch and hole punching a hole in a card, which then gets a ribbon threaded through it and tied onto the Christmas pudding to say this is a nutritional panel, this is best before date, and all the other things. So they do earn some money in the lead up to Christmas doing that. Last year we did 4,000 puddings, and they were...
There was a lot of bows.
They were paid well.
I really enjoy that. And I had one of your Christmas puddings last year, and it went down a treat at Christmas.
Thank you.
And you also remind me of my teenage years sitting, watching TV and cutting out shelf wobblers.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a lot of that as kids. Yeah. So I'd love to now dive more into products and new products, how frequently that might happen in your business. Do you find that you do bring on many new products each year?
Not each year, but we have brought on a few recently, and they're not necessarily... We've got 3 that we've brought on between about this time last year and now. And they were all in response to market demand from trade shows, learning what people wanted, as opposed to us going, we can get this new ingredient, let's do it. I do have a story of us finding we could get a new ingredient, let's do it, and it failing miserably. So it's not really something that we're doing anymore. But one of the things, we have a spicy tomato relish, which is great, but our kids hate it because it's too hot. Mm-hmm. So we asked a lot of our friends and other people if a less or no spicy tomato relish would work, and so hence we developed what we now call the home style tomato chutney, which is essentially, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to our spicy tomato relish without the spice. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is if you just take the spice out, all the flavours of everything else change. So you've got to play around with making it still taste similar or better without the spiciness in it. So we've done that, and that's a new SKU we've brought on. Another product we've had for a very long time is called savoury eggplant chutney. Feedback we got, there was no one was going to buy it because it's got eggplant in the name.
Okay.
So even though if we take that particular product to a trade show, like Good Food and Wine Show or something like that, that's one of the top 2 sellers. Once people try it, they'll buy it. But the feedback was the name was putting people off. So we've changed essentially nothing except for the name, and that is now called Mediterranean eggplant chutney. But at least it's got that idea that the flavours are not standard, I suppose, because it's got a lot of cumin and turmeric in it, so it tastes sort of that area.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I think it's really a terrific insight that you've shared, that the new products that you're bringing on now are coming from that direct feedback that you're getting at trade shows and the like. And if you didn't go to a trade show, you wouldn't know that the eggplant product is actually a great product.
Exactly.
Necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it just shows how important it is to speak to the customer. I really advocate for customer first on everything. Yep. Tell me, you said there were 3 innovations that came out of being at the trade shows.
Yeah, so the last one we have, it's also an old product of ours. It's was called mango, apple and pumpkin chutney. And the feedback was pumpkin's out. Like, no one wants a chutney made from pumpkin. And essentially in the flavour profile, the pumpkin wasn't there. It was more a cheaper fruit which has no taste. It's a neutral taste, but it carried the apple and the mango really well. And if you just chucked apple and mango in a jar, it would be overbearing. So the pumpkin did have a place. So we essentially took the pumpkin out of the name.
Right. So again, it was really a name change.
Yeah. I did get an email once many, many years ago from someone complaining that I'd called this chutney mango, apple and pumpkin, but when he'd looked on the ingredients list, it should be pumpkin, apple and mango because there's more pumpkin in it than anything else.
Right.
So
yeah.
that's actually what got me started, because I wrote back to him and said, thanks for your feedback. Understand that you're technically correct, but I can call it whatever I like, and I call it that because those are the flavours you're going to taste in the order you're going to taste them. It was pretty quick thinking because I don't really like customer complaints, but anyway. And that got me thinking, well, hey, if we just took the pumpkin out of the name, then no one can say there's something wrong with it. It worked.
Yeah, that worked. Yeah, great. And so, do you find, talking about customer complaints, do you have a bit of a two-way conversation with customers outside of trade shows? Do you find that you're interacting on social media or through an inquiries line?
Yeah, we get emails quite regularly. We've got it hasn't happened for a little while, but we used to have a couple of people who would wash our jars and send them back to us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just off the bat, not because you asked.
So that was always lovely. And, we love that, but it's not necessary. Please don't send the jars back. Use them for something else.
It's not possible to manage it if you haven't set up that infrastructure. Yeah. I'd love to hear about the time when you used to innovate. Before speaking to the customer, you talked about, tell us about the thing that didn't work.
The thing that didn't work. So just before COVID, we actually, my wife and I took the kids out of school and travelled around the world for a year with the kids. Yep. So they were years 6, 4 and 2. And we did homeschooling and we travelled through South and Central America and the Middle East and discovered heaps of cool stuff, and food being one of them. One of the things that was really big was salt grinders with different flavours in them. Jerk chicken in the Caribbean, for example, is essentially a salt blend with Caribbean flavours put in it, and then the guys on the side of the road buy it from the supermarket and they put it on, and they've got jerk fish or jerk chicken or whatever. And in former Yugoslavia, we were there for quite a long time. A lot of the thyme salts and things like that they put on the lamb is pre-made and available in the supermarkets. So we came back with this genius idea that Australia was going to fall in love with this. We didn't ask Australia, we just decided that we know that this is going to work. Turns out Australia really doesn't like that idea.
Oh dear.
So
it does sound like a great idea.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, in my head it was awesome. But unfortunately it's not that big an idea. But that might have been the way that we rolled it out as well. And there's possibly, with a bit of thinking about it, it might be a way of doing that again in a different format. But as it stands right now, it wasn't a great success.
Yeah, it brings to mind your food service clients, and how does that work? Do you have a relationship with your food service clients, like chefs, for example?
Yeah, some of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, 50% of our food service clients still through the distribution model, but we do supply directly to quite a few chefs, especially in Sunshine Coast, Traviston, that sort of, within an hour or so of here, when we have huge feedback from them. That's because I'm in their kitchens, delivering the product to them. I try and time it so I'm either there pre 9 o'clock or post 2:30, because chefs you can't talk to them in between those in that time frame. So if possible, I try and do my deliveries when I know the chefs are more amicable to having a conversation.
Yeah.
And you do get heaps of good feedback from them. And even some of the restaurants we supply via distributors, we still have a really good reputation. I don't know, yeah, but we talk to them and they give us feedback. Because our distributors we're friends with as well. We've been with them for a long time. We know them very well. And there's been quite a few times where they've gone, we can't actually deliver your product that we're distributing for you to this kitchen. Can you do it for us? So, we're taking our distributor's invoice and handing it to the kitchen. I could actually begin this myself.
Yeah, again, it's probably a net positive having such a close relationship.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah.
Do you have a product line that's different for food service, or is it the same as what you go into retail with?
No, it's all the same.
It's all the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and have they had any impact on recipes and product ideas?
We use, like the Boat Shed Cafe was one of our big clients. Steve, the chef there, he allows us to use any of his food that he makes with our products for our social media, for any of our sorts of things. And I mean, he can make this stuff look amazing compared to what we can do. Well, I mean, I think I'm all right at cooking, but I'm not that good. Yeah. So if we want some photo shoots done or whatever, Steve will cook it in his kitchen and then we'll go down and take photos of it and pretend we made it.
That is a fantastic resource, for your content. Yeah. Just really highlighting again how beneficial it is to have these key partners that you can do different resources from. Yeah. Tell me, beyond Maleny Cuisine, I feel like you're quite active across the, like, say, in the Food and Agribusiness Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been Food and Agribusiness Network. It's been around 10 years now as a formal entity. Way back when we bought Maleny Cuisine, FAN was loosely around, but it was more just an amalgamation of different food businesses trying to help each other. It hadn't been formalised into anything. There's a lady called Wendy McDonald at Sunshine Coast Council who was basically the one who put us all in contact with each other. So talking Gourmet Garden, Woombye Cheese before they changed their name to Woombye Cheese, Wimmers, there's others I can't remember off the top of my head, but we would sort of get together once every 3 or 4 months and just sort of chew the fat. Obviously Gourmet Garden were really big and Andy was running it at the time, but he was so nice for us little guys to talk to and say, hey, this is the problem I'm having. You know, we were in the process of we were getting into Woolworths, but that was a massive thing at the time. So having someone like Andy who knows all about it bounce off was amazing. And Wimmers were in a similar situation at the same time. So, yeah, that was the start of FAN. Sort of 3 years later, Andy ran with it and turned FAN into FAN. Right. And then we sort of fell off a little bit with it, not because of any other reason apart from we were travelling around the world and trying to get into Woolworths, and it was really head down, just work. And then 3 years ago, I sort of put my hand up to FAN and said, hey, this is... And it's the FAN people at that stage, I didn't know any of them because all of the FAN people I knew had moved on. So I sort of put my hand up and said, well, I am Maleny Cuisine, here I am. And I actually said, look, I want to help out small businesses, not for free, but not for huge amounts of money, because I know if you go and hire a consultant, then you're sort of locked in for X amount of hours per month and so on. And so I said to the ladies at FAN, like, I'm a consultant of sorts. I'll do hourly rates for people, and if you get people with tricky questions you don't know the answers to regarding food manufacturing, then send them my way and I'll do it. And I've talked to lots of people over the last couple of years who've got interesting questions about food, and it starts from small people who are working out of their kitchen and want to know about labelling to bigger people who want to get into Woolworths or have logistics problems getting stuff north, because trucking companies going north from the Sunshine Coast are expensive and hard to find. So yeah, I've had all those conversations, and then they got to a point about 18 months ago where fan said they wanted to do a 10-week course, which people would sign up for, come do 1 day a week for 10 weeks and learn, a series of bits of information about running their business. And they essentially asked me if I could put a package together about how that would look, which we did. I thought it was hugely successful. And actually yesterday we had a coffee catch up with the majority of the people who did that course. And I've had two phone calls today from course members, and so it was a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that does sound like a cool thing to do. And doing that kind of work and consulting for other businesses, does that have an impact on your business? Does it sort of help put things into perspective or give you ideas about how you run your own business?
Yeah, it does. It's made me think about how we do things and why we do it. Because you're sitting there telling a person who's got a really small business, and I had this we did some 1 day workshops for really small guys who just starting out. And one lady, I remember in particular, said, I'm growing this stuff and I'm picking the stuff and then I'm making it into a product and then I'm labeling it and I don't have enough time. There's not enough hours in the day. And I said, well, that's cool, except are you trying to grow it, pick it, make it, label it, and send it out all in 1 day? Or do you have a day where you grow it and then a day where you pick it, or a day where you pick it and grow it? Or how are you allocating your time? And the light bulb went off for myself. How am I allocating my time? Am I doing this? So, and I think it was beneficial for her, but it was also beneficial for me because I suddenly went, and that's where I came up with a couple of my golden rules, and I'm guilty of not doing it for you, but one of my rules is don't just check your emails, respond to them and file them. And check an email Olivia sent me and didn't respond to it.
Yeah,
anyway,
I'm guilty.
My bad.
I'm very guilty of the same. I understand. I think when you've got a creative brain, doing emails can be a real challenge.
Yeah. But that's one of my mantras now for people saying is please don't get up in the morning, have your cup of coffee and check your emails because you'll forget half of them. Just wait until it's email checking time and then actually answer them.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
It's great advice, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah, I do try to do it myself now. Yeah, I have tried to allocate days for certain activities. Yeah. And if a day turns into rubbish, it can turn into an email day. Yes. Like if the project falls over and you're overwhelmed, just go into emails. Yeah. When you are bringing new products to market or product updates to market, how do you test and learn from that? Is that learning at the Food and Wine Show, or is it giving product to friends?
Friends, yeah. Good Food and Wine Show and other trade shows like that are too precious to get wrong. Mm-hmm. So, any other testing's done pre that. So when we get to it, it's go. They're really expensive, but done right, they're actually free marketing because you can make your money back. If it's a direct to public, if you're selling to the public, you can make your money back based, so that's free marketing. If you're doing a B2B show, then you really need to be on your game because you're not going to you might have forked out up to $8,000 for your stand and you're not going to see a direct return on that for maybe 3 or 4 months, and if at all. So you don't want to be trying new things at those sorts of shows. It's too risky. So you go there. Even everything that we take to a B2B show has been pre-tested. We've got a network of people who we work with, from brokers who go into restaurants and food service places for us and so on, social media people and that sort of thing. So if we're going to hand out a piece of paper, it's been checked by 3 or 4 different people prior to make sure that one person will look at it and go, oh, the information I want is not easily accessible in here. Another person will going to say, like the font doesn't work or whatever. Everything we we put out for those expensive shows. It's been tested prior to going to the show, sure.
Yeah, that's a really smart system, and I think something a listener could take away from is when you're developing a product or a piece of marketing material, you can't just assume that because it looks good to you that it's going to make sense to your reader. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, back to Kylie, she's one of the people that would send it past because she talks to chefs and she does marketing things to chefs. So why wouldn't you use her?
Yeah. I have a question at the tip of my tongue, so I'm going to have to cut this out. I wanted to go back to the project you did through Fan with other manufacturers on the coast.
Yep.
What's one of the most common questions?
How do I get a distributor is one of the most common. The other one is how do I know how much to sell my product for? That's tricky for a lot of people, that one, because there's essentially what happens is if you're not making enough volume, then your fixed costs are going to drive your per unit costs through the roof. So you have to be able to look at it and go, if I make 10 of these things, they cost X per unit. If I make 100, they cost 1/10 X per unit for my fixed costs. And if I make 1,000, and it continues like that. So how do I know? Because currently I'm selling 10. I want to sell 100, but if I can't sell 100 if I charge
$100 a bottle.
Well, what it costs to make 10.
Yeah.
So how do I extrapolate it and work out what my price is? And so it's a process to go through, and everyone's different, but you have to be really honest with yourself what your costs are, and you'll get to a point where, and let's say rent, it's really easy. If your rent to manufacture 10 is the same as your rent to manufacture 1,000, well, you can extrapolate. You can say, well, my rent's not going to change. But if you get to the 100 mark and go, well, my rent's now going, I'm going to have to change premises because I don't have the space to make more than 100, then you have to put that into your calculation and make sure that you're going to be able to afford to make 1,000 and that your price is not going to come back to the cost it made to make 10 because your rent's going to go through the roof. The other thing with that costing is lots of things will change. Like when you're buying glass jars to put stuff in, if you're buying a box of them per unit, they're really expensive. But if you start buying a pallet load, they're less expensive. If you start buying a container load, they're even cheaper. So those economies of scale come into it, and you need to work that out when you're doing your costings. So when we sat down with people and did that, that was a couple of days to go through what they have to think about and how this works. It's not just a simple Will walks into your factory and says, oh, well, if you made 50, you could charge this much, because it doesn't quite work like that.
No. And I think you also need to know that there is going to be the demand. Like you're going to be able to sell 1,000, 10,000, 1 million.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a lot of the people who are starting out are doing markets, and you might be up to like your Mundi market size, and they're good sized markets. But if you want, I would say, if you want your Saturday back, then you're going to have to sell to a shop. And White's group are awesome. They'll deal with Sunshine Coast people as individuals and have individual accounts. But the majority of IGAs don't want individual accounts. The last thing they want is you turning up with your back of your car with 5 boxes of stuff in the back. They don't want it. So you'll have to have a distributor. So then you have to work out what your distribution price is, how much, because there's got to be something in it for them. Otherwise, they're not going to take you on. And then choosing which distributor you work with, because there's some who might have already got a product very similar to your one, and you're going to waste your time going and approaching them and saying, hey, I've got this awesome product, and why don't you get rid of that one and put mine in, because they're not going to do it.
Yeah, interesting. I want to move on back to ideas, and I have a couple of questions about you've talked a lot about an early trip around the world that helped you come up with some really great ideas, and learning things when you're at at markets or at trade shows and learning from teaching and consulting with others. Is there any other ways great ideas happen, and how does it work in the family? Is there any process? Do other members of the family come up with good ideas? You know, you did mention the spicy freeze chutney.
Yeah, they do, but not necessarily our nuclear family. But I'm originally from New Zealand, and my wife's originally from South Africa, and we've, as far as Australia is concerned, New Zealand and Australian food's pretty similar, but there's a massive South African contingent, especially in the Sunshine Coast, and South African food's slightly different. So we sort of draw a little bit of inspiration from going back there, and you know, because when we go back to South Africa, we hang out with family, and we don't really do too much touristy stuff because it's there to see granddad and cousins and people like that. So you end up with some of the really old family recipes as well being sort of put on the table, and and you do get inspiration from that. And that's a little bit where the salt thing came from, actually.
Yeah.
Because anyone's been to a South African's house, you'll know they're going to, in an instant, they'll put about half a sheep on a fire and put salt on it and then plate it up for you. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I imagine also being in that relaxed mode provides inspiration.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and really cheap red wine helps.
Terrific. What's next for Maleny Cuisine? What's happening in 2025 and beyond?
2025 is we've decided, food service is what we're really pushing this year. And we're currently doing radio advertising, doing lots of direct to hospitality trade shows. So we've signed up for a lot of them. We're getting all of our promotional material ready for that. And we've taken on Bidfood as distributor so that we have that one invoice capability. So and this year is all about just really getting food service nailed down, because it's not it's organically grown up until this point, but this year is what we're doing. So even our radio advertising is not to push people to IGA or Woolworths. It's actually to restaurants saying, come on, there is a local alternative to the big boys from Adelaide. We have similar price. We're closer. We're fresher. We're better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, terrific. And will you be participating in any big trade shows this year?
Yeah, so we've got Food and Hospitality Queensland coming up, Good Food and Wine Show, that's at the end of the year. We've put our name down for Taste of Moreton Bay. I'm pretty confident we're doing it, but we haven't had the actual sign-off. Relish, which is Harvey Bay, we're doing that one. And that's off the top of my head, those are the only ones I can think of. There'll be fan events during the year. We'll do those as well. Yeah, that's what I can think of at this stage. Yeah.
And if anyone wants to contact you for your consulting services, is that something you're still doing this year?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I'm probably not advertising as much as I could have, but yes, it's still there, and you can either get me through the Maleny Cuisine website or just email me which is will@wnconsults.com.au.
Terrific. And before I sign out, is there any questions you think I might have missed that you think would be interesting to talk about?
No, you're pretty thorough.
Okay. Terrific. All right. Well, thank you very much, Will.
Oh, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, good.
Hey there, it's Olivia Ratten here, the host of this podcast, The Product Makers Lab. I hope you got a lot out of today's episode. I loved learning about Will and his family's journey with Maleny Cuisine, a journey that has taught Will what it takes to grow a food business here in Australia and how to navigate supply, production and distribution. If you want to get in touch with Will, check the links in the show notes. And if you want to hear more from me, please follow this podcast on whichever podcast platform you like to listen on, and reach out to me via my social links, also in the show notes.